Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to June on the Range. This is an inaugural BookTube event coming out in the month of June celebrating Western novels. It was created by Michael K. Vaughan, and he assembled a great posse of co-hosts, and I'm one of them. And we've been having a blast reading Westerns all month long, and we're not the only ones. I've been hearing from quite a few of you saying that you're loving it too. You're having a blast, either discovering or rediscovering this genre that used to rule the roost. And I admit, quite a few times, I don't, make much of this fact, but quite a few times when there are read-along events, when there are monthly events, BookTube events, quite a few times I am picking and choosing very carefully for those events, my own participation, not because I don't love BookTube, but because my reading in whatever the event is about is usually pretty extensive, to the point where I'm not going to be breaking any new ground, and I need to figure out innovations to keep myself interested. That is not true with Westerns. That could not be true with Westerns. Maybe some dyed-in-the-wool Western fans out there, but not me. I read a handful of Louis L'Amour, a handful of other books, but some names in the industry, going back, 70 years, names of authors who pumped out one book every 2 months for the whole of their adult life, hundreds of titles from individual authors, over and over and over again, dozens of those authors. There are plenty of those authors that I stocked on many a bookstore shelf. I found the latest one or ordered it for many a customer, but it never even crossed my mind to read them. Not at all. I just assumed that it was warmed over Louis L'Amour. That turns out not to be true. And I have, in the course of this June on the Range, long may it rain, I'm hoping it comes back next year, but in the course of this June on the Range, I have encountered many, many authors that I'd never read before. And that has led me to explore the Western genre in ways that I never have before. Not just in terms of what we were talking about yesterday, the raw Augustinian outlines of what a Western is. And that wouldn't be prescriptive at all, right? The joy is in the exceptions. But to make some sort of a decalogue, like the one that I repeat every year for mystery novels. What are the things you can and cannot do in a Western? What are things that, if you do them, fine and dandy, your creativity is to be celebrated, but you're no longer writing a Western? I think we know a Western when we see one, but what about the ones that blur the boundaries? I haven't made such a list so far in June on the Range. Maybe I'll go out that way with a bang, because we only have a couple of days left. I'm going to miss this event. I've heard from quite a few of you that you're going to miss it as well. A sure sign that a BookTube event is a success is when people don't want it to end. But it is. We are coming to an end. I will not have a functioning apartment for the end of June. For the beginning of July, I will not have walls or ceilings. I will not have clear navigation. There will be wires and holes in the floor, so I have to watch Frida every minute of every day. It's a little bit of a strain. I'd like that to be over with. I won't have my fainting couch. I don't have my fainting couch. Instead, I have my pre-World War I bed, where I've spent endless hours reading. Nevertheless, no matter what shape my place is in when the month ends, the month is ending in a couple of days. So I'm reading as many Westerns as I can because I'm overdoing it just a bit because I'm going to move on to other things in July. As much as I've come to enjoy having Westerns as palate cleansers, I'm going to move on to other things in July and just go back to Westerns next June if we do June on the Range again. I hope that we do, and I hope I get to be a co-host again. I'd had enough of experimentation the last couple of days. The last couple of days I've been doing progress reports here, I've been showing you Western romances that are contemporary. The sassy young debutante shows up at the hardened yet hot cattle rancher's ranch in a Porsche. She spits gravel as she does a hard U-turn in the driveway. So you've got contemporary technology, you've got cell phones, you've got satellite dishes. And as a result, the category of cowboy takes on, I won't say an ironic edge, because it's often meant seriously. The characters in those romantic Westerns are usually hardworking, actual cowboys, and there are people in the American West today who, if you ask them, they will unironically and quite accurately tell you they are cowboys. So I won't say that, but there's a Potemkin element involved. It's very much a 21st century consideration of those things, to the point where I'm pretty sure that a romantic Western set in the present day could not legitimately be called a Western. But I could be wrong about that. A number of you emailed me and said the way to know for sure would be to do a video with Sarah from the Bookish Knitter, who knows everything there is to know about romantic Westerns, and we could hash it all out together. Who better to set not only BookTube, but the whole of the known world to rights than Sarah and I? And maybe that video will happen. Things are a little chaotic here, but I would love it. That would be great. As far as I'm concerned, I would do a video with Sarah every week, if I could. Certainly, judging from my emails, a lot of you would like to see that. A lot of you have gone over to her. She has a channel devoted to romances. And wonderfully, too. Wonderfully. She loves all romances, and she's a particular dogged defender of category romances that are despised even by romance readers. And she does a terrific job of it. And I've had a number of you over the years, I've mentioned her channel many, many times, and I've said, you should definitely go over, subscribe to her channel, watch every video. And I had a number of people say, yeah, well, I would do that. Your recommendation means something to me, but I don't read romances, so I wouldn't get anything out of her channel. And I don't think there's a single person who told me that years ago who isn't completely hooked. Not many of you have been hooked enough to prod you to read romances if you don't. But there's a certain kind of BookTube channel that it doesn't matter what the books are, you're still going to watch and enjoy it. So that conversation may happen, but whether it does or not, I spent the last couple of my designated time for June on the Range reading covering experimental stuff. That's kind of experimental stuff. It's certainly not traditional Western novels. And there are hundreds of thousands of those. So it doesn't feel right to keep experimenting, especially with June on the Range running out of time. So I'm going back to traditional Westerns and back to some of those authors who've made a huge, prolific career out of writing these things, an endless amount of these things. And I found one today by such an author, only I don't know the story of this author at all, but I think there's a story to be had. The author is William Johnstone, and the book that I picked has in little subscript with J.A. Johnstone. I'm assuming J.A. Johnstone is a collaborator of some kind in the family, which may indicate that William Johnstone is getting on in years. William Johnstone has 1 million books to his credit, so that might be true. It might be that this is going to be a W.B. Griffin type thing where you just pass on the franchise. And I know William Johnstone's name from bookstores as well, because when I worked in bookstores, we got hardly any Westerns, hardly any traditional Westerns. But when we did, if we might get, Long Arm comes out every month. We might get one of those Western smut. But if we were going to get a standard traditional mass market Western, it would almost always be a William Johnstone. So I know this name. I'd never tried the author before until this June on the Range, when I tried a novel called Winchester 1863. Which is about a character who has a Winchester 63 rifle. And believe it or not, that's it. That's what the novel was about. It was about a man whose identity, whose whole world, whose everything about him, his personality, it's all that gun. I kept expecting that would change. And it didn't. It was a startlingly, almost defiantly one-dimensional book. But I thought I'd give it another try, so I picked another one. Support Your Local Deputy. With one of these horrific Photoshop covers that I really don't understand. Take all the trappings off this and just have the cover. First of all, the ladies of the town in the background are doing the can-can. Why? In the middle of the street, in the middle of the day. Or is it the middle of the day? The shadows are going in 4 different directions, so I'm not really sure. And I think they're wasting their time, because if you took away the title and the author from this book, I think we would agree that we're looking at the cover of a gay romance. Right? So those ladies, no wonder they seem so hyper-energetic. They probably are desperate. But this is a novel in which the main character is called Cotton Pickens. And he's a sheriff with a kind of quippy sense of humor. Has that sort of you know, some of those classical John Ford westerns where a character always has a dry one-liner ready, and this is that kind of a character. And he has a bumbling deputy called Rusty Irons. And when the book opens, it opens the way no fewer than 10 westerns that I have read for this June on the Range alone have opened, with a main character waiting eagerly for a stagecoach that is bringing him his mail-order bride. In this case, Rusty Irons has sent away, I guess he saved up enough coupons, to send away 4 Siamese twins. And he's hoping that someone in town will legally marry him to her or them. He doesn't even know how to think about it. It wasn't a promising opening, right? Because this thing was written in the relatively present day. This was certainly written decades after Betty Friedan. This was written decades after there was any excuse to do what some of those old traditional westerns I've read have done, which is to straight up make women into commodities. I sent away east for a thing. It was wrapped up, I paid money for it, and it's coming to me. I'm eager for it to get here. That wouldn't have sat well with me in the 1960s. But in 2022, to open a Western novel that isn't all that old, this isn't a vintage thing at all. It says right on the cover, first time in print. So it was done in the age of Photoshop. Bad Photoshop. For me to open a book in 2022 and have a character eagerly waiting for a woman the way I wait for 10-year-old tech delivered from eBay, it's a little bit disturbing. And I wasn't sure that I would stick it out. But I kept going. I gave this thing a try, and it wasn't long, so I just finished. I figured I'd read it to the end. The stagecoach is waylaid. The bride is kidnapped. And suddenly, Rusty Irons and Cotton Pickin have to go on a mission. And there are darker elements involved. There are elements. It's not just a random kidnapping. The darker forces that are involved need to be dealt with. They become apparent with grueling slowness. You will know what's going on long before our two heroes do, and that is fun up to a certain point. If it's 10 pages, it's fun. If it's 50 pages, then you're just yelling at these morons or wishing that you had any other main characters in the book. I didn't like it. It was shallow and dumb and predictable, and what am I supposed to do with Cotton Pickens and Rusty Irons? But I did learn something from it. William Johnstone and J.A. Johnston, whatever relationship they have, some of you can probably tell me in the comments. Is this father and son? Father and grandson? I don't know the story. But one of the things that they're doing here, this is, I guess, is a part of a series. I got the strong impression that Cotton Pickens has appeared in other novels. One of the impressions that I got from this thing is something that I can at least use to read back into some of my earlier June on the Range reading. And that is intentional tongue-in-cheek lampoonery, which I didn't really get in some of the earlier traditional romances, or traditional westerns that I was reading. I didn't really get that. You'll remember that I was talking about over-the-top, purple, Hopalong Cassidy type dime store novel, Jesse James dumb prose. With a slang term, a made-up slang term, a stupid, inauthentic slang term on every line of every paragraph. It didn't occur to me until I read this book that maybe a lot of that is kind of pokey humor. That it wasn't vamping for die-hard traditionalists, but rather was the author poking fun. Certainly, I think that the Johnstones are poking fun here. There's an element in this novel of intentional over-the-top humor. Doesn't work, doesn't land, it's never actually funny. It's never actually even amusing. But at least I could see it. I could see the mechanics involved and know them for what they are. And that, suddenly a light bulb went off and I thought, okay, well maybe there's an audience for this sort of thing. Maybe there's an audience for people who aren't taking these things seriously. That would certainly explain the title of this book, right? Which is a takeoff of a humorous Western. So maybe that's one of the parting lessons that June on the Range has to give me here, is that maybe I was missing that element in some of these things. So I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to go back and read any of the bad authors that I've encountered in June on the Range, just to see if I can get more nuance out of some of those crappy old westerns. But at least now I know I'll be better on the lookout for it. Don't know exactly how I'm going to finish out June on the Range. There's so many more things to read, just millions and millions of books. But the event's got to come to an end sometime. It comes to an end. Today's Wednesday. It comes to an end tomorrow. Friday is the 1st of July. I'm hoping that some of my co-hosts will make send-off videos, wrap-up videos, look back down the trail videos. But now that I'm doing the math in my head, never a good idea. Oh, actually, I've got the iPad right here. The iPad will confirm whether or not I'm right. Yes? Because this device has a calendar. Does it not? Yes, it does. Yeah, tomorrow is the last day of June. Friday is the first day of July. Wow. Okay, so tonight is the last June on the Range reading that I'll be doing. I wonder what I'll pick. Got a whole I've got file after file after file to pick from. I wonder what I'll pick. Well, you'll find out tomorrow. I will definitely read at least one romance, or keep doing that, one Western tonight. And then I'll report back tomorrow and give you a little wrap-up. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.